This is the most controversial camera of the decade. This is the Sony RX1R Mark III. It's amazing. It fits in the palm of your hand, but it's a full frame sensor with 60 megapixels and a 35mm f2 lens. This absolutely blows me away. This is an incredible engineering feat. Like, this is way smaller than the other small cameras that you're used to seeing. Like, people talk about how small the Leica Q3 is, but look at it side by side. Look at it compared to the Fuji X100VI. That's an APS-C sensor. This sensor is more than twice as big and it's smaller. That's amazing. I'm going to tell you whether you should get it. I'm going to talk about the $5,100 price and if this is possibly worth it. And I'm also going to thank our sponsor, Squarespace. You need some kind of presence on the web. You need something better than just social media that shows off your work, that shows off what you're selling, that shows off you. Get your own custom domain. Like, I have northropphotography.com that I just completely redesigned and modernized using Squarespace's latest templates. I have a different layout for mobile and for desktop, and all of that is super easy, even if you're not a nerd. Don't take it from me. Try it out completely free at squarespace.com/Chelsea. When you love it, the coupon code Chelsea will get you 10% off. Thanks for sponsoring us, Squarespace. First, let's talk about the design of this camera. This camera was designed with two priorities in mind: small size, first and foremost, and then image quality. And this camera makes total sense if you realize that everything else was cast aside. Obviously, price was not a priority. This is not a budget camera. Obviously, versatility was not a priority. This is kind of a single purpose camera. This is like a sports car. This is like a Ferrari. People in the car community understand that niche products, low production products can exist, serve specialized needs, are cool, and don't take anything away from those of you who just want minivans. Now, the size is amazing. Even if you compare it against small interchangeable lens cameras like the Sony A7CR, which has the same sensor, this is really small. There's no flange distance on this. That's the distance between the back of your lens and the sensor itself. The sensor's literally fastened to the back of the lens, like the rear optical element is glued to the sensor. And that particular design element helps to make it so small, and also dictates some of the limitations of this, like it can't move as it would on a camera that had sensor stabilization. The sensor is fastened to the back of the lens, and thus there is not room to put in a focal plane shutter like most cameras have. And so some of the camera's biggest drawbacks come from that one particular design choice. The lens here has a beautiful aperture ring. The rear screen here is pretty familiar. It's pretty much the same screen that you've seen in other Sony cameras. It gets a little washed out in the sun, even when it's in sunny weather mode. It's fixed to the back of the camera. One of the biggest compromises that Sony had to make for this small size is that it no longer tilts like the previous generation did, and it doesn't flip out. In the real world, I did find that particular design limitation to be frustrating, because the way I would shoot a little everyday carry kind of camera like this is a lot of low angles, a lot of higher angles shooting over a crowd. And when I need to do that, I find I have to move my whole body to the altitude to see the screen properly. So if I want to shoot something from a low angle, I actually have to get down on the ground instead of just flipping the screen out and going low. And so that felt like a pretty big compromise to me. The electronic viewfinder here, the previous generation had a kind of a cool but complicated pop-up mechanism, and this is just fixed. And the viewfinder here it's fine. It's a good quality viewfinder, nothing to write home about. But I will say I never used it, except for the sake of testing it. I never automatically used it. I always use the rear screen. And that's because it's not a telephoto lens. Like I use the viewfinder if I'm shooting telephoto, but normally I have this like this, and I'm moving it up and down. And like the height of the camera is very important to me, and I'd rather move my arms than bend my knees. And as a result, I pretty much kept my face away from the viewfinder the entire time. I told you this beautiful little camera had two priorities: size and image quality. Size, stellar, smallest thing out there. The image quality, well, pretty amazing. It is a full frame 60 megapixel sensor, so that's among the very best of the best, but Sony didn't update the lens. This is still basically the same lens from 10 years ago. I was curious how it compared to the full Sony 35mm f1.4 GM at f2. And the answer is not great. It's actually pretty hazy. There's just a detail lacking in these bricks that the G Master captures perfectly. And let's take a look at the edge of the frame. Here we see, even with profile corrections turned on, that the G Master is vastly superior. There's tons of chromatic aberration and fringing. Second example photo, let's just zoom in on this text. And yeah, you can see there's still a really big gap. This is not G Master quality. Maybe this could have been significantly cheaper and been a 24 megapixel sensor, or give us maybe an improved lens. Here's a real strength for what this camera is good for: autofocus. And this is literally a game changer. With this camera, I can walk through the streets of New York and just sort of hold it out, point it roughly in the direction of something, and press the shutter. And it's going to get everything in focus. If somebody's eyes are in the frame, it's going to find the eyes and focus on them. If there's a squirrel or a bird or a car, it will automatically identify that subject and focus on it. And it worked amazingly well. I can't say it captured everything in focus. There were times when people walked into the frame and I was hoping it would lock onto them, and it didn't. While it's not perfect, it's damn good. And I think that trait alone makes this probably the best street photography camera that can be made. So I love the autofocus. Now, something I found problematic is that it doesn't have image stabilization. As I mentioned before, that is a design limitation. They can't put sensor stabilization in this because the sensor is glued to the lens. But me as a photographer, my style includes lots of slow shutter speeds, particularly in street scenarios. I will lower the shutter speed, allow cars to show a little bit of movement, people walking past to become a little bit blurry. And so I felt like I was giving up some creative control there. And when I did try to use longer shutter speeds, well, camera shake kicked in really quick. Even at 1/40th of a second, about the reciprocal rule for a 35mm lens, I was only getting about 2/3 of the shots sharp. About 1/3 of the shots still had some camera shake. So if you are going to shoot at 1/40th, be sure to rattle off 3 or 4 shots to make sure that one of them is sharp. And that's because it's a 60 megapixel camera. It's very high resolution. By the time I got to 1/25th of a second, I was only getting about half the shots sharp. Now, for some cameras, you would say, okay, well, you bring a tripod, right? Except that this is a camera designed specifically to be small and light. And by the time you need to pack a tripod, suddenly you have something more bulky, kind of defeating the entire purpose of the camera. The battery on this, it's better than the previous generation, but it's still kind of lacking. Like, I didn't go a day of shooting without running out of batteries. So you'll want to get an extra battery. But it is a big improvement over the previous generation. I talked to a photographer who shot the previous generation a lot for concerts, and he would pack 6 batteries in his pocket and keep them on a charger because he knew he might have to rotate through all 6 batteries and then need to rotate through them again. That's how bad the battery life was on the previous generation. So if that's a concern and you love the previous generation, well, this one's going to be much better. I'll tell you about some more interesting quirks with this, but first I want to thank our sponsor, Squarespace. Start at squarespace.com/Chelsea when you want to share anything with the world. Whether it's a business or a personal project, Squarespace makes sure it looks as good as it possibly can. They give you so many different professional templates that you can optimize and customize to your specific needs. I recently rehashed my entire website using their latest version of their templates, and all my old pictures look so much more modern. They automatically got transferred over, and I was easily able to change the layout of the screen for either wide desktops or vertical mobile devices. Try it out for free at squarespace.com/Chelsea. Get your site set up, make it look great. And when you love it, the coupon code Chelsea will save you 10%. Thanks, Squarespace. The shutter's really interesting on this camera. The lens has a leaf shutter built into it. That's basically like the aperture of the lens shuts down and also acts as the shutter. They couldn't give it a traditional focal plane shutter because, again, the lens is fastened to the sensor and the focal plane shutter typically goes between the sensor and the lens. So they had to work something out. And they're kind of pitching the leaf shutter as an advantage, but my experience with it was actually a pretty huge disadvantage. Now, leaf shutters in general do have some advantages, like they will sync with flash at essentially any sync speed, but they are slower than a traditional mechanical shutter. And this one, when you're shooting wide open at f2, will only allow you to have a maximum shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second. To put that into perspective, if you're shooting in the sunlight at the base ISO of 100 and you're shooting wide open, maybe you want to blur the background, you need a shutter speed of 1/4000th, 1/6000th, 1/8000th, and you can't use any of those shutter speeds, which means if you have it in aperture priority shooting wide open in full sun, it will just plain overexposure pictures. Stuff will be blown out because it can't move the shutter fast enough to limit the light enough. I have experience with leaf shutters. I understood what was happening upon reviewing my photos, and I thought, I'll switch to the second shutter mode, which is the electronic shutter. And the electronic shutter goes up to 1/8,000th of a second. So full sunlight, wide open, no problem. But the electronic shutter introduces a new problem, which is rolling shutter. This 60 megapixel sensor has a very slow readout. And while most of my shots turned out okay, if there was a shot that was moving a little bit, either the subject was moving or the camera was moving, the shot was ruined because of the slow readout speed. So you have a leaf shutter and electronic shutter, and usually you'll be able to pick from one of the two to get the results that you want, depending on the lighting conditions and the aperture that you need. But you also have to manually switch them. For some reason, the software does not just automatically select the shutter you need. You'd think it would be like, oh, he's got the leaf shutter selected, but I know he doesn't want to overexpose the shot, so I'll just switch over to the electronic shutter and give him the results that he wants. No, there's no automatic switching mode. You have to manually go into the menu and change it. Real world shooting with it, I found that to be frustrating and unfun. An easy way to solve this would have been to give this the 50 megapixel Sony A1 sensor. The A1 has a really fast readout speed, and thus we could have used the electronic shutter without the rolling shutter compromise. I would never use this as a video camera. First, this is not anybody's only camera, right? Like, you've got a few other cameras in the garage if you're adding this $5,100 specialized camera. It doesn't have any stabilization, so all the video you shoot with it is going to be shaky unless you put it on a tripod. But if you're shooting video on a tripod, would you pick this camera? I wouldn't. I would pick a different camera. And again, we established if you buy this, you probably have other cameras. It does have some concessions to video, like it has a microphone jack and a micro HDMI port. I can't imagine there's anybody who's going to use the micro HDMI on a camera like this for video. So that seems like a weird design compromise. Like, save me a little space and lose those particular features. Also, the video is limited to 4K at 30 frames per second on a $5,100 camera. Now, my iPhone does 4K at 60 frames per second all day. In fact, most new cameras do. So it's a disappointing spec. It's fine. My main camera is a Hasselblad that doesn't shoot video at all, and I would consider this to be a camera that also does not shoot video because none of those specs are going to compete with any similarly priced camera. One benefit of that 60 megapixel sensor is it adds some versatility. Like, if you want to go to 50 millimeters, you can crop down to 29 megapixels or go to 70 millimeters and still have 12 megapixels of detail. The reason this camera is so controversial is there are lots of options that are better in one way or another. Like the Sony A7CR has a grip that honestly feels better in my hands. I'd rather hold it. And I think it's actually easier to carry, especially on a hand strap, because that grip makes it easier to hold onto. Whereas with this, you kind of have to grip it with your fingers, and I found that to be a little bit tiring. The A7CR also has a more versatile flippy screen, and it has sensor stabilization, so it can do those long shutter speed shots. And if you slap on a similar 35 millimeter lens like the excellent Sigma lens, it's going to be significantly cheaper. I think the A7CR looks a little bit better too, especially if you get the one with the chrome top on it. So most people should probably get that configuration. But again, this is optimized for size. And if you don't care that it's significantly smaller than everything else out there, then you don't want this. You could also check out the Fujifilm X100VI, which doesn't have a full frame sensor, doesn't have that same amazing dynamic range, and despite having a smaller sensor, it's significantly bigger, but it looks a little bit nicer. It has a proper optical viewfinder, which I love, and it's significantly cheaper. A little more expensive than this are the Leica Q3s. They actually offer two separate focal lengths, so you could choose a wider one or a more telephoto one depending on your shooting style, and they have sensor stabilization. But they're also significantly bigger. Be sure to subscribe because Chelsea's going to compare this camera against that Fuji X100 and the Leica Q cameras, so you can pick which fixed lens compact camera you want. I'll wrap this up, but first I want to thank our sponsor, Squarespace. Head to squarespace.com/Chelsea to see how easy it is to set up a professional website. You can get your own custom domain, take appointments from clients, sell products online. Just about anything you can imagine starts at squarespace.com/Chelsea. Try it out completely free, no credit card required. And when you love it, the coupon code Chelsea will save you 10%. Thanks, Squarespace. So in summary, should you get this? I want it. I mean, I pretty much have every camera at my disposal, but there's nothing else like this, and I've enjoyed shooting with it. Bike riding, walking with it just around my neck. This is like the perfect everyday carry. This I want with me all the time. 35 millimeters is exactly the focal length I would choose for that sort of thing. And while the image quality didn't match a full GM lens, it was good. So will I buy it? Maybe. I'm gonna see how much I miss it. And when I send it back, if I really miss it, then I think I'll pick it up.